Hey everybody. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing Sorry, I'm thrown off because I'm seeing myself doubled up. Ignore that. But today we're doing something different. We're going to be doing a workshop with Matt, and we're going to be going through his process to see how AI and automation might be able to save him some time in the ways that are going to work for him. So Matt will go ahead and introduce you real quick.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Matthew Bliss, the guy who will be interrogated today for my AI use or lack thereof. Bit of background for me. I'm a podcast editor and producer. You can head to mbpod.com to see my work with other people, but I also have my own podcast that I released a couple of weeks ago called Rethinking Podcasting, and it's my first podcast that I've had for maybe a couple of years. That's my own. That isn't me doing that work for other people. And a lot has changed in the last couple of years. I don't think besides Coffee with a Podcaster, which was admittedly a little while ago and way too short, there's a lot of AI functionality that's now available that I could possibly use to integrate with the way that I create the podcast, and subsequently probably do it for other people. The clients that I edit for and produce for, it would make sense to be able to do those things a little bit faster. So, with the preeminent expert of AI automation and podcasting and whatever other specialized niches you have, Jesse, you're going to help me out a little bit today.
That's the plan. So let's go ahead and just jump into this. And for anybody watching, if you have questions as we go along, go ahead and drop them in. We'll get to them as we can.
You're muted again, my friend.
Sorry about that. Stupid stream or eCam. Every time I switch a scene, it mutes for some reason, but not always. That's why I can't figure it out. But what I was saying is, when we're creating a podcast, there's 5 basic categories or phases: ideation, prep, recording, post-production, and asset creation. Recording, there's nothing we can really automate or use AI for. We can work on streamlining the process, your equipment, so it's as efficient as possible. So we're not really going to be talking about recording today, but let's start with ideation. So
I think before we do, I think it's very important to mention, not for my context, but that there are discussions around at the moment about the use of AI for recording purposes, which we would have talked about, I'm sure, on previous live streams, that there is text to voice available for people to use. There is full AI video generative stuff that people can create, perhaps alongside text to voice with audio. That stuff just seems to be booming in the industry at the moment. Now, I think if I speak for us both here, our collective opinion on that is that anyone who creates with those things is either not creating a podcast or is probably looking to have something else. Am I speaking correctly on your behalf there, Jesse?
yeah, and that's why I didn't even touch on those things as far as recording. To me, there's something, at least as of right now, there's something very special still about the human being the centerpiece of content creation.
That's right.
That may change, and we might be able to just use text to voice, text to video, and recreate ourselves, and no one can tell the difference, but we're not there.
Yeah. I would suggest people watch Surrogates with Bruce Willis as a potential future state for thinking about how we purport ourselves on the internet. But anyway, let's carry on.
So let's look at your ideation process. What's that look like? Where do you have any pain points, any places where you feel like you're spending more time than you want to on it?
So this is a place that really is the central theme of the reason I have my own podcast. And that's where we're going to start today, just talking about my show, because it's easier for us to infer a single process for a single podcast and then to apply it to the rest of my clients, because my process for them will be very similar to mine. But ideation for me, for rethinking podcasting, is realistically whenever I have an idea that I have out in the wild somewhere, I'll note it down and then slowly flesh it out over time as I accumulate more information or think it through, default mode, network, and boredom really contributing to the heft of those topics. Now, rethinking podcasting being a philosophy-driven podcasting show, the idea is that I take an idea and a conclusion and build it out in a way that makes both logical sense, philosophical sense, and creates an argument that necessarily leads to its conclusion. And it's about things that are of particular interest or that I'd like to point out to the rest of the industry, the podcasting industry, with my own take. That being said, I could share my screen now. I won't do it, though, just for simplicity and because I don't want people stealing my ideas. But I have, at the moment, 17 solo episode topics waiting in the wings for me to develop. Potentially 3 or 4 people to interview, because I do interviews on the podcast as well. And I'm constantly adding to aspects of having a podcasting philosophy, wanting to give background on Socrates and ancient Greek philosophy and those kinds of aspects to build out what I'm actually doing, because I don't presume that people listening to the podcast are going to have a strong understanding of ancient Greek history and thus ancient Greek philosophy as well. So, that being said, if you listen to all that and said, Matt, I know the perfect AI combination for you that can help you pump a single sentence idea and then build out a set of arguments that make your case, then even then I probably would only consider using it and not necessarily use it entirely. But what do you think?
Well, first, I want to go back to you write down your ideas. Where do these ideas come from? Do they just pop up in your head? Are they inspired by stuff you read? Where do you come up with these kernels of your ideas?
Everywhere. It'll be
everywhere.
Listening to and reading content. Sometimes I'll be out on a walk and 2 ideas will just connect randomly for some reason, and I'll go, oh yeah, that's weird. Let's talk about that. And sometimes like a single sentence or a single idea can't get fleshed out for an entire episode. Like there's not enough depth there, or there's enough people talking about it that I don't need to say anything else different about it. But they kind of appear ethereally. I don't think, with the podcast being only new, I'm up to releasing tomorrow morning episode 8. So I've still got a bit of groundwork to make before I run out of ideas, I think. Yeah.
And then when you get these ideas, how do you write them down? Where do you write them down? Are there any bottlenecks to getting them written down when they occur to you?
Not at all. And unfortunately, it's because I always have my smartphone with me wherever I am. It's not an ideation tool per se, but I like to use Todoist as an app. I actually pay for it, and I manage my podcasting tasks and have productivity integrations for time tracking and things like that. But I simply pull out my phone, open the app, and list a task without having to assign a project or priorities or dates or due dates or anything like that. Nothing to it except write down the idea as fast as I can. And as long as the idea is there, I know I don't need to hang on to it in my head. So it could be out on a walk, could be listening to content, I could be, well, not in the cinema, but, literally anywhere. As long as the smartphone's next to me, write the idea in Todoist, and then reorganize and reflect on it later.
Okay, so once it's in Todoist, what's the next step of your process?
Well, generally, I will add in the Todoist description a few more notes if I have ideas about where I want the episode to go. Then, I guess, moving from ideation to prep, for each of the episodes, not the interviews, but the ones for which I have these ideas, I like to script the entire episode so that I can make my arguments as cogent as possible and so that I'm not waffling during the episode. I want every single word that I say to contribute to the entire argument. So from Todoist, I'll take the idea and the notes, I'll take them into Notion, and there's no templates there necessarily. I have a general format for the episodes, like an opening hook, introduce the podcast, have an opening foray of statements to lead into maybe 2 or 3 parts that explain different aspects, and then a conclusion with music bumpers for the post-production and things like that. But in Notion, I will script the entire thing in all its particular parts. And once it's scripted, it'll be ready to record.
I'm just thinking this through. So you could probably, I'm not sure how much time it would save, but how much time do you spend taking information out of Todoist and putting it into Notion? Is it just as simple as looking at Todoist and going into Notion, okay, this is what I'm talking about, and you just start writing?
Yeah, it could even just be a simple copy paste, in which case, if you can shave off anything from 4 seconds, then, that'd be impressive.
Yeah, 4 seconds, that's not even worth spending any time on.
No.
So
and
what do you...
Look, it needs to be said too, that I have an acumen with keyboard shortcuts and maneuverability in my operating system that means creating a Notion page isn't me moving the mouse, clicking new page, orienting it, moving it, right click, select heading to, okay, move on. Like it's literally, Alt tab, copy, Alt tab, Notion, paste, / page, title, paste, /H2, enter, add title, like super quick stuff. So the only reason it's 4 seconds is because I have those shortcuts in my regular lexicon. Otherwise, there probably could be some templating to be done in Notion that would make it easier from Todoist. But yeah, just not a huge time saving there.
Okay. And that's what this is all about. Everybody has their own workflows, things that work for them. We're not trying to save time we're not trying to force AI or automation anywhere where it's not going to actually help. And that's where understanding the process really helps. So when you're working on the script, do you find any bottlenecks, any frustrations, any areas that make the process longer than you feel it should sometimes?
Not at all. And in fact, disappointingly for you, I'm sure, the writing part of these episodes is something that I'm trying to lean into a bit more strongly than I used to. I've been in the phase of creating podcasts where I'd give myself a prompt and then expect the episode to kind of fall out of me in a way that I can definitely do. Like my training as being a teacher and an IT trainer in a large organization means that I can take a PowerPoint point and, elaborate as much as needs to be done. But the eloquence and precision of scripting these episodes, as well as the construction of the arguments and the creativity of the progression through the argument, is something that I enjoy. So even if it were possible to capture my writing imprint and have AI somehow infer what I'd like to argue as a result of a premise conclusion sort of setup, I probably wouldn't derive as much enjoyment as scripting it myself. And now that is to say that this is a part of the process that could take 40 to 90 minutes, the scripting part, depending on the how fully fleshed out the idea is in my head, or how much I need to fact check myself as I write it, or how much I need to change the angle to not be as direct and bitey, perhaps. But yeah, that's time that I seem to relish and enjoy. So I'd rather AI didn't steal that time away from me if it was at all possible. But you might have a different idea.
Yeah. The big thing that I'm hearing is you enjoy the writing process, right?
Yeah.
But how do you know you've covered everything? How do you know you've done it in a way that's going to make sense? How do you know the argument, you're making the best argument for your case?
Well, I'd respond to that in two parts probably. The first being having studied and enjoyed philosophy since I was 17, 16. I'm now 37, so that's over 20 years at this point. My ability to construct arguments in a way that is sensical, aligns with what I know, and allows me to somewhat convince people, perhaps, or at least help them understand what I'm thinking, I think is pretty strong. But the reason that I think a podcast is better for this than me, say, writing a book with a series of chapters pointing out all of the inadequacies of the podcast industry, is that I am fallible as a human. And the less buttoned up the argument is, the more opportunities for engagement, the more opportunities for people to respond. And that's an important aspect of my podcast too. It is about creating a podcast philosophy, but also using Socratic dialogue as a means to arrive at a truth. Now, as a podcaster, that's hard when you do it by yourself, because you can't be in a dialogue by yourself by definition. I think you can, and that'll be another episode. But creating a dialogue with the audience is important. So I'd say that the fallibility of the arguments, regardless of whether I had the opportunity for AI to check whether it made sense, or even the rigidity of the facts that I use to support the case, I think being vulnerable and having gaps would hopefully inspire people to respond and have a crack at the hole and see if they can fill it or argue it away. But that could also be just a valid excuse for me not spending as much time as I probably should trying to bone up the arguments. So, what do you think?
Those are all valid points. The one thing I could see AI helping you with is having that dialogue, because you can use it as an editor, as someone you can have this conversation with to get other viewpoints, to help you really shape your argument, to see if you might be, if your view, because we're all biased by our own views, as much as we try to be as open-minded to every possibility, we're always going to be somewhat blinded by our own experiences. So,
True.
I mean, that's one of the big things we've found using AI, is it can be very helpful as an assistant, as someone to help you with different things. Not there's so much focus on AI doing the work, and I think not enough on it being an assistant or a tool available to you. As like, I mean, just for the writing process, it could probably help you really outline your content. Because didn't you say you outline it first?
If I can, yeah.
So you could create the outline, give it to ChatGPT, ask it, does this outline make sense? Do you have any recommendations for things I might be missing? It's always like, if you're a writer, a lot of times writers work with another writer to help with the writing process, or they work in writing groups, because having other people provide insights does help you avoid those blind spots. So that's one of the areas where AI might be able to help you some, as an editor, as a second set of eyes, to just get some additional ideas or viewpoints, or like you were saying, being able to have more of a discourse as you're actually writing the episode.
A fear that came to my mind there, which I often experience myself conversationally, is that when I have an idea, let's say about, podcasting in the industry, and, it might be something that I want to change in the industry that people should know about. If I think about it for long enough, then I can sometimes convince myself that I shouldn't do anything on it. Like, I've had the idea, I've thought it through, I've come to my own conclusion. That's all that's necessary. Like, I don't need to do anything with that. My fear would be with having a conversation partner like ChatGPT or any other, Claude. Claude, I imagine, is more polite and eloquent than ChatGPT would be, that I would get the satisfaction of that dialogue from ChatGPT, and all of a sudden I have an AI conversation partner that I'm not sharing with the rest of the world. So it adds an extra step that fleshes out the argument. But I'd rather be refuted after creating an episode by someone from whom I could build an addendum to the argument and create a subsequent episode to show how the conversation has happened over time through the podcast, than to have a one and done, this episode is complete, I don't need to add anything else to this idea. And it kind of aligns with part of the values and the mission that I have for the podcast too. It's showing that anything in podcasting, most things in podcasting, aren't definitive. There are some things that are definitely bound by rules that cannot be refuted and must be done in order for podcasting to take place. But there are so many things that are completely up for debate, change as the winds change direction, and any conversation can wend any which direction, and everybody can be right and everybody can be wrong. So being fallible at the same time as being approachable for a counter-argument, but also showing that as time changes, the argument changes, the information changes, and the resulting conclusions change, shows that, fickle nature of what would be information in podcasting, as opposed to opinion or something that somebody's trying to sell as certainty, which is necessarily uncertain. This is getting awfully philosophical by necessity for the podcast that I'm writing, but if we get too deep down into the philosophical side of things and don't get to it enough to the AI, you pull me out of it, because I can philosophize all day. That's why I want to do the podcast.
But that's part of what these types of workshops are about, because it's your show. It really matters the why behind everything. The only argument I have kind of against that fear is the AI is can only give you one insight. Your audience can still have their own insights, which are probably going to be different from what AI is giving you. So even if you do use AI as kind of a writing partner, someone to bounce ideas off, whatever, that's not taking away all of the interaction you get from the audience and all of their viewpoints.
Maybe I can explore it once I get a response from an audience member, and then I'll be satisfied that I can have both, that I'll still create my episodes. But I reckon the episode that I completed today, that comes out tomorrow, it might inspire a few people that listen to add their own responses to it. It's going to be an episode about how people in podcasting interpret data in a very biased way, thinking that they motivate podcasters, but instead they add a sword of Damocles hanging over them, waiting for them to fail. And there's a particular person that I call out for their LinkedIn post as part of it. Not directly, but, that bloke might respond to it with a voice message or something. But yeah, look, I definitely don't refute the idea that having a conversational partner for what is a conversational method as an approach to creating an argument in podcasting would be a benefit. And I've been meaning to explore it for a while, so maybe that's something I can try on the weekend.
Yeah, that's all I'd recommend is try it out, see if it works or if it doesn't. Because again, that's part of what this is. It's about finding what works for you and what doesn't. You might start using it and go, yeah, this just isn't working for me. Or you start using it and go, whoa, I didn't expect this. This is helping me do things I never even thought of. So
Yep.
It's just a matter of getting in there, trying it out, seeing what happens.
Yep. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't do a bit of conversational, like coaching style work to ideate the podcast and how it can fit in with the rest of my business and my whole North Star kind of thing of helping podcasters flourish. I definitely did that before the show was fully ideated. So yeah, I should have remembered that.
Okay, so we've got the ideation. You've scripted it out. Your prep is done. You record. So let's see. Let's skip over the post-production for now because I know you wanted to focus on the podcast itself, and the post-production is going to be a whole other kind of in-depth conversation. So let's jump over that and go into asset creation. So what assets are you creating for your podcast?
So at the moment, I've got the basic title and show notes for each episode. I create a thumbnail from a template that simply has a shortened version of the title in it. And it's kind of a riff on the logo, the cover art that I use for the show. Which I should mention, some parts of it were generated by ChatGPT as well. Kind of fleshing out my ideas and then generating an image off the back of that. Very simple, but yeah, did that. Now for the other assets like the promotion and things like that, I've been taking a very deliberate approach with the way I want to do it. The podcast is audio only at this stage. There will be a distribution of the episodes to YouTube at some point in future. I do record the interviews in video, so those will be structured into or repurposed into like mid-form content based on topic. But I'm still thinking about how I'd like to construct those, and those I definitely see room for a LLM to help me out. Like if I wanted to interview 10 people first, find a common subject thread throughout all 10, and kind of narrate around it to make inferences and conclusions based on the conversations I've had with the people I've interviewed. I think that would be a really good idea for a YouTube video, you know. And the idea is that I don't want to create video content that is exactly the same as the audio content, but I also want to create the video content with the standard YouTube practice in mind. You know, come up with the idea, create the packaging, and then build the rest based on that. And some of that packaging will be informed by the previous work that's been done. And that could easily expand into other videos like tutorials and explainer videos, scripted things, you know, anything like that. And in terms of social reels and stuff, I do intend to make some of those at some point. Haven't had the opportunity quite yet. But I do have a common practice with repurposing content for clients where I will take the transcript of an episode, the edited transcript, not the unedited version, put that transcript in ChatGPT with a few custom prompts that I use to pull out clips from the episode, amongst other things, and then use DaVinci Resolve to select the video content, if it's there, and pull that out and turn it into a short, which I've got buttoned down to a pretty tight process at this stage. So I will, for this podcast, soon be doing that. For my clients, some of my clients, I currently do that. But yeah. Oh, and LinkedIn posts. Again, feeding back to the writing stuff. I'm trying to write those manually myself as a way to, you know, continue the pleasure of writing and trying to find a way to speak to an audience in a way that means I'm not pumping out, you know, voluminous content. Instead, I want it to be very intentional. But there's always room for those kinds of posts to be generated as opposed to intentionally written if I run out of time. I'm not sure. I'm a bit waffly around this stage of things. I'm slowly pacing myself, trying to follow my own advice that you don't need to do everything all at once with a podcast, and knowing that I don't have to, like, I'm not staring down the finish line with a guillotine at the end if I don't get all the stuff done. You know, I'm trying to take the pressure off and make sure that all the things that I do are sustainable and all those other things. So yeah, I'm kind of dawdling with the asset creation a little bit.
I wouldn't say that. To me, it sounds more like you're being really methodical and building a foundation, understanding how you want to do things so that when you are ready to start putting the time, I'm not sure if it's a lack of time or just wanting to think things through before you start doing it. Either way, you're not burdening yourself saying, okay, now I have an episode coming out. I need to create shorts. I need to create all of this other stuff around it. You're creating the things that need to be created for release. And sounds like you're more or less focusing on just kicking the can down the road on the promotion side of things. Get the episodes done, and then later focus more on figuring out the best ways to market and promote your show. Is that right?
Yes. I'm also, as I create more episodes, figuring out and distilling what the actual selling point is for the listener. Like, it's so easy to create a podcast and go, I have a podcast, and the podcast is a podcast, so you should listen to it. Instead, this is a podcasting podcast for podcasters and podcast professionals. I need to make sure that I'm not wasting my listeners' time, because their time is valuable and often their time is money. And what I want to offer is something different than they get anywhere else. And so iterating on what the offer is which is through like a tagline or whatever it might be. You've got the title of the podcast, Rethinking Podcasting. Already that's different. Helping podcasters flourish is a tagline I'm using across my entire business, microcosm, whatever. And for this podcast, I've distilled it from a very broad kind of let's think deeper about podcasting to rethinking how podcasting is, the state of the nation kind of thing, and coming up with your podcast philosophy. So the takeaway that I want anyone listening to this show to be is that I am telling them things, not just for them to listen to, agree with, or disagree with, and never listen to again. Instead, they should be listening to what I say, but also listening to how I say it. And also showing that how and why and what I say in these episodes leads to my podcasting philosophy, which I've actually started writing out, and I'll be scripting into like a little series for either YouTube or maybe the podcast, I'm not sure. But all of the content that I make is going to be intentional towards you creating a podcast philosophy, rethinking about the way you think about podcasting and your own podcast. And I need to be seen to be doing the things that I'm talking about, because there are so many podcasts out there that talk about podcasting that say your post-production workflow is so important. And if your podcast isn't the best quality in the world, then no one's going to listen to it. Meanwhile, they've got the dishwasher going in the background, windows open. They've had 3 bumpers to introduce themselves as the podcaster, recorded by 3 completely different people for no reason. I don't know. That's not that. I don't see that as someone walking the talk. Whereas with this, I want to show everybody how I do it, that you should do it, and then changing your approach to the way that you think about podcasting through a philosophy. So all that is to say that I'm slowly adding components to this to make my broader case about deeper thinking in podcasting as something that is valuable, even though it's a very navel-gazerly kind of activity. It doesn't add direct, monetary value to a return on your podcast work, but it does internally create some intrinsic value that then pushes you forward with intentionality and an understanding of what you're doing. So every piece of content that I do should feed that. If someone looks at me doing a video version of the podcast on YouTube, I want them to think about first, okay, why is he doing that? Like, I don't want to watch that. I want to go to the audio version and I'm going to go for a walk and listen to that. I want everything to contribute to what I want this podcast to be. And so that's why all this stuff will be incredibly intentional, and that I'm slowly kind of drip feeding it out as time goes on.
And I mean, that goes completely with what you're talking about, because so many podcasters look at all of this stuff as things they have to check off their checklist. And, well, we have to do this just because it's expected. What I like is that you're looking at taking the content that you record, and instead of just making a video version of it, you're looking at doing maybe tutorials out of some of the stuff you collect, creating mid-form videos. And for anybody who's watching, mid-form means it's probably usually 5 to 10, maybe up to 20 minutes long. It's not a full interview. It's going to be sort of curated information that fits into one package, one topic, something like that. A piece from one or more videos that will stand on its own. So there's different audiences on YouTube. The Shorts audience is completely different from those who watch really long format videos, like 1 hour, 2 hour long interviews. The people who watch mid-form video there's some crossover with the long form viewers, not so much crossover with shorts viewers. Shorts viewers tend to be their own entire demographic. So it's helpful to cover different areas with different types of content. And I think AI could help you really strategize the best ways to do this stuff. Because you kind of mentioned needing to take some time to figure out the best way to do that. You start giving it your transcripts and ask it just for ideas on what are some mid-form videos that can be taken out of this transcript. You could do something similar with LinkedIn posts, not for the writing part of it, because we know you enjoy that part, but for the ideation part. Go through this transcript and find 5 ideas that I talked about. That's probably not going to work on your shorter episodes, but with the interview episodes, it really does help. Go through this transcript, find 3 to 5 key topics we discussed that would make for a good LinkedIn post. That way you've got at least the idea, and you can automate that part of the process. Once you have the transcript, where do your transcripts come from?
So I take the completed audio and upload it to GoodTape, which is a transcription website, and get the transcript from there. But I always give it a clean up because invariably transcription has issues. But I enjoy using GoodTape because it's got you get a lot of monthly hours with the uploads you get. Having lots of clients that want transcription as part of the offering means that I can have lots of clients and I don't have to run out of hours and pay more money. But I can clean up in the interface. Like I don't have to export it and then clean it up manually myself. It has some brilliant tools to adjust the transcript while it's in there. And it's got some semblance of speaker attribution, has some limitations, but does a decent job. And timestamps as well. They can be a bit broad sometimes, but again, gives me just enough that I can take that transcript after I've cleaned it, copy paste into ChatGPT, and do a bit of work with it.
What type of cleaning up are you doing?
Name misspells. There are occasionally issues where it adds speaker attribution into the text of the transcription, which I'm always on the hunt for. Labeling the attributed speakers where needed, and sometimes where the music is interpreted by the AI as a word, I'll have to remove that too. But I think one client I have, after I do the 30-second hook clip trailer at the beginning of their video episode, it has like a thing, and that interprets it as you or something. So, little bits like that aren't actually words, I remove those too.
Okay, and that's part of this whole process is asking questions, because there's a lot of cleaning up of transcripts that can be automated. The types of stuff you're doing is probably going to be best left to the human, unfortunately.
Yep.
But how do you get the transcript from GoodTape? Do they email it or do you download it?
I download it. They have the option to export. It's in TXT files, by the way. You can have speaker attribution and timestamps on it or not. You can export it with or without those things.
Because I'm just thinking what you could do to automate the processes that you would generate from the transcript, which I'm assuming you use the transcript to help shape show notes.
Yes. More commonly, ideate, and then I clean up afterwards. It usually gets a human pass from me, but yes.
And then you could potentially use it to analyze the transcript for ideas for your mid-form videos and being able to suggest timestamps for your clips to piece together. You could use you said for shorts, at least with clients so far, you go through the transcript, identify sections, and then take that into DaVinci, right?
Yep.
How much time do you spend going through the transcript trying to find those sections?
Well, I take the transcript to ChatGPT. I will query it based on my understanding of the episode and its content for clips that are usually no longer than 45 seconds, including timestamps verbatim. Don't change the text, make sure it's quoted directly. And from that, I'll then find the timestamped clips in DaVinci via the edit page, or more commonly, for audio-only shows that provide me a video version as well, I will have ChatGPT give me the clips the same way, but have DaVinci do the transcription so I can hunt for the words and then use the clip extents from the transcription there to cut the clip that can be extended on either side and then import it into a templated timeline to do the rest. So there's a bit of, flexibility with which AI tool or number of tools I use to accomplish that. But I don't select the clips manually myself. I prompt the LLM to give me what I believe is the most beneficial thematic aspects of the show or the episode.
Okay. So you start out with your transcript. We could build an automation where the way it starts would depend whether GoodTape has an API or not. If it does, we could connect straight to that so that once the transcript is created, it starts the automation. If it doesn't, you could download it and then upload it to like Google Drive someplace. Do you use Google Drive or do you use... Why can't I think of the name of the other one?
Dropbox is the other thing that I use regularly. But Google Drive is ready to go for anything that I want to use it for. And I think commonly automations are managed through Google Drive easily. Would that be right to say?
Yeah. So we could set something up where you upload the transcript to Google Drive. Stop zooming in. Just stay. Okay, so take that to Google Drive. And that would start an automation where you send your transcript to, say, ChatGPT. You could run different prompts, run the transcript through different prompts, or you could probably group some of this stuff together. Show notes. Let's see. Probably show notes and LinkedIn would probably go together. So we'd do something like and LinkedIn, it could be social media in general. So that would be one prompt. Sorry, people, about my writing and inability to draw straight lines. We could also send it to do, let's see, what did we have? To look for your shorts and mid-form video ideas. And with this, we customize it to whatever you need. So you enjoy the writing and the creating part. So for you, you'd just be generating ideas or starting points for all of this stuff for you to be able to go and do the work yourself. For someone else, maybe they don't enjoy the writing process, so maybe we'd create prompts that would actually help them write this stuff. So now, once you have that, all of this can be uploaded to Google Sheet, all tied into one episode, or per episode. So you've got your show notes there, your LinkedIn ideas, your short and mid-form video ideas, all in one place. You're not having to do any of this. The only work you're doing is downloading the transcript and uploading it to Google Drive. The rest of this is on autopilot. You go do something else, you come back a few minutes later, and you'll have all of this stuff ready for you to go. No taking the transcript, putting it into ChatGPT to get ideas for your show notes, then doing it again for LinkedIn ideation.
Yep.
Ideation. It kind of got jumbled coming out between those two versions. Same thing with your video content. You could, thumbnails, you said you have a template and it's basically a shortened version of your title. So there's really nothing there that we need to even look at. Another thing.
And for the interviews, I'll generally use a profile picture of the person, which is easy enough to do it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I see that's really missing here are blog posts. Any intention of doing those?
I have an intention to begin a newsletter, a weekly newsletter that covers everything that I do, but this isn't going to be for the podcast. It's going to be for kind of my podcasting universe. So still working on a name, still investigating the platform that I might use. It's probably going to be ConvertKit. But that will be my version of a blog per se. That newsletter content is going to be used in tandem with other projects that I'm probably going to start as well. But as I work on my website for mbpod.com, I have room for, SEO content in the form of a blog to appear there. So there is zero reason why, if a process like this could make it incredibly simple for me to generate content based on the corpus of transcripts I have across my podcast and potentially some information from other places where I've talked about my podcasting efforts, that it couldn't generate blog content for me. And I would have very little concern about my writing input and creativity as a result of that, because it would be designed to be SEO content to try and attract people to either listen to the podcast or go to the website and investigate my services and the possibilities. So, in short, blogs are missing, but I'd be very happy to integrate them if the content could come easily.
Yeah, we could. That part can be automated like we've talked about. We haven't gone into depth with that for you because you enjoy the writing process. Mm-hmm. From what it sounds like, for more personal short form content, for the type of stuff for SEO, just basically to feed to the machine, to the algorithms, you're fine as long as it meets your standard.
That's it. Yeah. And that it's there for a reason. Not the value-driven reasons for the podcast, but that it's not just me throwing things into the void for no particular reason, Yeah,
you can really put a lot of effort into an AI automatically written article. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but depending on what you want, like what we're building for ourselves, takes like a live stream. It'll find all of the different things. Generally, from a 90-minute to 2-hour live stream, we might generate 10 blog posts from it, from different ideas that we talked about. It will do research to pull in other sources, find industry quotes and stuff to make it more professional. So it's going to look, one, it's not going to come off as AI slop. Two, it's going to come off as more credible because we've done research, we're pulling in quotes. We're not just taking the transcript and cleaning it up and formatting it into a blog. We'd actually be creating unique content out of that, what was talked about. Each one of those blogs has your information. It's going to point to your website, to your different places to help build your authority. Authority is really important, especially in the AI search world. So creating a blog from your article or from your transcripts, that would be another automation we could build.
Yeah.
And with
Now,
your newsletter, go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to very quickly say that the thing that interests me most that I know that you've done or do for clients is the idea of having a corpus of information that can be tapped into, gathered, processed, ideated, prompted, whatever. But having that information is a big part of, being able to contribute to what would be a broader, more refined message, blog, whatever it is. So that's part of the reason why I've been a bit lax in doing this stuff too, because I know that you can have episode one transcript of a podcast that could go for the next 5 years and create 10 pieces of content as a result of that one episode, but that invariably ends up being a lie or inaccurate or changed because something changes with the podcast production, or you add more information that would refine what you would have otherwise ejected from an AI-based solution. So if it's at all possible for us to create that corpus as a result of what I do for Rethinking Podcasting, I'd be very interested to explore that.
And I was just about to go into that with the newsletter, but also with the blog. With what we've built for ourselves, when we're writing the blog, not we, when AI is writing the blog, we've built a database or central repository of all of the transcripts we've created. Once we start writing blogs, those will get added to it. Basically, any content we create is going to go into this knowledge base. So, I mean, not everything. Anything that's 100% just repurposed from one of our larger forms of content, like social media posts, that's not going to go in there. That would be more in a spreadsheet somewhere that we can access. But for the knowledge base, we're putting all of our long form content. We can also put in any articles or videos we see that we think this has really good information, or it's a research project that has a lot of relevant statistics. We can add that in so that when we're writing the blog, it can do searches trying to find information from our previous content. So it can reference previous episodes if there's a relevant episode to refer people to. And that really comes in handy when you're talking about a newsletter, or even your idea of some of the mid-form videos where you're taking transcripts from, or taking clips from multiple different episodes. You could give it an idea, and that's the nice thing about this knowledge base, is that you can chat with it. You can use it for automations. So like for newsletters, it's really good for that because you can tell it, I want to create this week's newsletter. I want it to have links for this week's episodes, but I also want to have a piece about this topic. It can go through your knowledge base and find anything you've talked about a lot about that topic and find you ideas or content to pull from. So you're not creating from scratch stuff that you've already talked about or written about.
And I love that. Like the idea of just slowly building and building on a collection of information that it continues to use to inform the kinds of things that it gives you. That's really interesting.
So it's basically what I see a number of podcasters, they'll take the transcript one way or another to turn it into a single blog post. This is that idea on steroids, because instead of just creating content from like a one-to-one thing, this episode created this content. Now we can create completely new stuff from our entire catalog, our vault of everything we've created. So that can go into not just newsletters, but articles. It can generate new ideas based on things we've talked about in part on an episode, but might be a topic that's worthy of its own episode or its own video. So it can be used for all kinds of stuff. And like I said, you can tie into it with like ChatGPT or anything else and just be able to, come on, and chat with it and tell it, I'm writing a LinkedIn post. Find quotes where I talk about this topic. I mean, anything to help shorten the time you spend on something, but being able to turn the knowledge base into basically a giant brain of everything you've done.
That's really cool.
And I'm sure there's a lot of other ways it can be used that I haven't thought of yet.
Well,
or at the moment.
Actually, yeah, well, I mean, you're learning and growing, and you'll be able to grow big data brains as time goes on, and you get to do more of them. But something that I see often with automation workflows that involve AI is that sometimes, perhaps more often than not, the person doesn't just stick to one. That Perplexity and Claude and ChatGPT and maybe, I think it's Llama, that's Meta's one, and you've got Gemini. Some automation workflows of information will pass through multiple LLMs at the same time. Would you see a benefit in creating content based on your experience by doing something like that? Like, just colloquially off the top of my head, I understand ChatGPT to be very good at processing information, but perhaps not being as personable and human as Claude. So perhaps the information repository goes through ChatGPT for ideation for a blog, and then the writing is in its first draft from ChatGPT and then gets sent to Claude, where it has a grammar pass, a human pass, human AI pass, whatever, and makes it a bit more personable than it would be out of ChatGPT. Have you got experience in circumstances like that? And have you seen where that can be valuable?
Let me think
Ignoring
the best way of...
Sorry, the automatic use case that most people would use is Perplexity, being a research-based tool predominantly. having it run through Perplexity for fact checking and then going to another LLM to be constructed into content would be one way to go about it. But yeah, sorry, you were thinking.
Okay, so Perplexity is its own kind of unique use case because it is very much designed for research. Stuff like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, the others, the LLMs, they're more or less built for general use. So in most cases, I don't see a benefit in trying to use one because it's better at this unless it is really heads and shoulders above the others in what it does. So for Claude, it tends to be a better writer out of the box and that it sounds less AI. But if you provide really good prompting, you can get really good results out of any of them. The big downside to using Claude is it's really expensive compared to the others. And the other kind of factor that goes into that is ChatGPT might be the king right now because they just put out 5. But next week, Google might put out a new version of Gemini, which leapfrogs them. So trying to constantly adjust based on what's best at that moment in time is just going to be a lot of extra work to keep up on all of that stuff. So when I work with clients, my recommendation is it really depends on your budget and what you're hoping to get out of it. If you've got the budget and you can afford Claude for your writing, yeah, go for it. But if you want to keep your costs down, maybe something like Gemini is going to be a better fit, because I haven't looked into the pricing of GPT-5, but I know before that, Gemini tended to be a little bit cheaper. I think that was the case. But they're both significantly cheaper than Claude.
Yep.
So
Okay.
cost is definitely, I think cost is a bigger factor than trying to find the best for any given use case. Because like I said, best is probably going to change quite a bit given the week or the month we're talking about. So does that answer your question?
Definitely. And it points out the important part too, that the more LLMs you're chaining together, the more points of failure you have as part of that process as well. Whereas if you're investing everything with one, with adequate prompting to get what you need, then that's one LLM. And if it changes, you can adapt to another LLM instead of Claude getting infinitely more expensive and then all of a sudden Gemini's compute gets way too expensive. So if you've got a Claude subscription and then funnel it through Gemini to then go to ChatGPT, one week you might pay like $200 a month, and then the next week you're paying like $1,500 a month because the compute ramped up so much. So yeah, that totally makes sense to me.
But if you're spending that much on anything, something's not right. Because when you're automating, well, you mentioned a couple things that I wanted to touch on.
Sure.
Mixing and matching LLMs in an automation, that's fine. It's not really going to cause any new types of problems that wouldn't be there if you were using the same LLM for each step. Each step of the automation is where you could potentially have an error. In my experience, most of the issues that are kind of intermittent tend to all stem from the LLMs and the way they output their data. So there's always going to be some oversight involved because the automation might not run every single time because maybe Gemini decided, today I'm going to output the data a little bit differently. So that breaks the the next step because it's expecting things a certain way. So automations, they don't run 100% perfectly, especially if you start building them to be more complex. So there is always some oversight there. But the other thing is the price, because doing this type of work, it's not covered by your monthly subscription. You're paying their API rates, where you pay by per million tokens, basically. But something like a blog shouldn't cost more than like 15, 20 cents. And that's if you're doing something really complicated and you're using a ton of, like you're using a 2-hour transcript and you're using the full transcript. There's things you can do to reduce your token usage so things are cheaper. So 20 cents is like completely unoptimized. You're not compromising on anything. Here's the full transcript because I want the LLM to go through every single thing that was said. And then we're going to send that into creating an outline and then doing the research and all of the different steps and creating something really high impact. And that's where you put different guardrails in. Maybe with the costs and budget, we only want to write 2 blogs per episode max. So we put that guardrail in. So it's not just ramping up your spend. Hey, I decided to write 15 articles for you today. Surprise. And then write 15 articles the next time. There's a lot of things we can do to control costs, but the big thing is it tends to be significantly cheaper than using the fancy SaaS products like Castmagic or any of the others that do like transcript to other types of written content, because they're doing the same thing. They're just selling it to you as a product, and they have to make sure they're making their profit, covering their costs of hosting and babysitting everything, all of that stuff. So when you build the automations yourself, you're paying less. I mean, Castmagic's what, $20 a month? Something around there. For $20, you could probably run all of these automations for a few months. And there's no limitation to the number of hours you can upload like you get with Castmagic.
There you go. That's pretty cool. But the trade-off there is that you're using the API to structure an automation yourself, whereas with Castmagic, you're paying extra money with more limitations, but offsetting the requirements for your knowledge to be able to utilize the LLM.
Yeah, you lose out on so much because you can't customize it to the same degree. You can't give it a huge set of instructions of, this is language I don't want you to use. This is, go check my knowledge base and learn my voice. Learn how I write. Learn how I construct stuff. Again, that's where that knowledge base really comes in, because it can be used to create profiles that you can use in other LLMs. Like if you wanted to use ChatGPT, because that's your main LLM, that's what you have a subscription to, you can put that in as custom instructions on how to write like you. It's never going to write 100% like you, but it's going to understand the little nuances of how you communicate. So it might sound like you to the average person, but when you're reading it, you're going to go, this isn't what I would have written or how I would have phrased that, but it still sounds like you, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yep.
But there's just so much customization you go with a SaaS like that, because they have to make it something that's going to work for everybody and all use cases. So just by definition, it's going to be more generic. And I see that. I know I call out Cast Magic, but you're going to get the same things with Descript, their Underlord, with Riverside's, what's their co-creator. They all give the same generic outputs. And you can fight it all you want, you can give it instructions, but they're set up in a way that they're going to do basically what they want to do either way.
Yeah. And that ease and simplicity bubble is going to burst at some point. I think there's going to be a time where the people that have taken the time to learn the automations, to understand how it works, and not just invest in a SaaS to do all the work for them so they don't have to think about it. There's going to be a time where the automation people are going to be at a distinct advantage compared to the others who have been in UI platforms the entire time and had the work done for a blank check,
I think we're going to see a time where we see a lot of SaaSes go away because we'll be able to create customized things that work for us and what we need, as opposed to looking for a SaaS that kind of works for our use case, but isn't quite right for how we think, how we work, how we operate. And I mean, some stuff is always going to remain. Something like Riverside and Descript. They're going to be there for a while because what they've built, it's more than just a text-based SaaS. They're providing a service that requires a server and all of these other elements to be able to record locally. That's going to be tougher to replace. But something like Cast Magic, I have to assume there's a reason why they were on AppSumo recently with lifetime deals. If your company is doing well, you're not going to go on to AppSumo. You go there if you're just starting out or you're needing to try to infuse some cash into the company. My guess is a lot of people have started using Descript's Underlord, ChatGPT to do the same things Cast Magic offers. And now Riverside's added their Copilot. We're seeing this functionality rolled into services people are already using. So Riverside, Descript, they're going to put those companies offering this once niche product, creating show notes and written content from your episodes. People are basically already using Descript and Riverside for recording their content. You add this functionality in, why pay another $20 to Cast Magic? And I think Opus Clip is one that's going to not get put out of business by Riverside and Descript, simply because so many YouTubers probably aren't using Riverside and Descript for creating their content. So there's always going to be a need for something like Opus. But a lot of the other stuff, I've seen a lot of Motion just showed up on my radar about 6 months ago. That's supposed to be an AI powered project management system for you. I think maybe that's not the right term, but basically you give it the tasks you've got on your plate, your calendar, and it'll automatically schedule stuff for you based on the time you have available each day. So we're getting to the point where we're seeing tools that are going to work better for us. But I think we're going to start seeing the ability for us to create our own simple tools that work best for ourselves.
Yeah. full agreement there. I think it's very interesting when you're in a space long enough to be able to see how companies change to where the control and the obsolescence come in. Because a very interesting addition that's coming to Captivate.fm is monetization, programmatic ad insertion, and a recording platform. So a hosting platform is bringing in, presumably, local recordings as a core tool in its subscription, whereas Riverside, that has recordings as a core tool in its subscription, along with everything else, has just started to add hosting to its complement of additions. So it's companies, at least in podcasting, that previously only stayed in their lane are now starting to creep into other areas, perhaps to monopolize a market or to be more competitive and offer more value because server space and compute is getting cheaper, or they need to be seen to grow in an interesting way. I think the longer we see this space, but the more we see products like Cast Magic become overly obsolete as time goes on, that will be the interesting amount of change that we can see in the space. And the important part is that AI, a lot of people talk about AI-based solutions, especially the AI ones that provide it as a service, are a solution in search of a problem. But slowly as time goes on and Darwinism hits the SaaS market, the more problems generated are going to be solved by AI, and soon the conversation will flip in the other direction. So it's just very interesting to see. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah, I find it interesting that the Riverside and Captivate announcements were like a couple of weeks apart. And
yep.
I mean, one, it's that kind of thinking that sets Captivate apart from all of the other podcast media hosts, because they're thinking big picture. You have like the dinosaurs, you've got Blueberry and Libsyn, but Captivate has come out, and maybe it's just the circles I'm in, but Captivate seems to have become the number one recommendation from people who work within the podcasting space, because they offer such forward-thinking features. Hey, we charge you based on the number of downloads, not the number of shows. You want 5 shows? Okay, we can give you 5 shows. You pay the same amount until you go into the next tier of downloads. They offer all of their features as standard, not as add-ons. I'm not sure if that's still going to be the case with their like video editing and recording. We'll have to see on that one. I could see that being an add-on or a different package altogether. Yep. But yeah, we're seeing it with Riverside. We're seeing it with Descript. Descript went out and bought Squadcast instead of developing the technology all themselves from the ground up. But all of these companies are looking at, it's kind of an arms race. We have to look at how we can provide the most value to our clients, or we're going to lose them to a competitor. I don't think anybody's going to jump to Riverside to be their podcast host right now, because the thing that frustrates me about Riverside is every new product they put out is an MVP. So it's going to be probably a good year before their hosting has all of the basic things we want, like analytics. They're probably, I'd say, at least a couple of years away from being able to even be IAB certified with their analytics.
Yep, that's huge. That's a really big component. And they didn't address any of the big stuff. They just said, hey, if you're starting a podcast, host with us. Let us know what you think. It feels like a beta more than an MVP.
all of their software or all of their new features always are beta. We're the beta testers. We're going to get the bare necessity built, and then we're going to listen to our audience to figure out what they want added to it. And I can see the benefit of that, but really I'd rather see them have a group of dedicated users who they build this stuff with, rather than putting it out there for everybody, because it is kind of a letdown when they put out co-creator or their shorts, magic clips, whatever they call it, and you test it out and yeah, it does the thing it does, but like with magic clips, you couldn't make corrections to the captions. So if your name's in there and it's misspelled or it gets a word wrong, you couldn't change it. And it's like, this isn't usable. But
Yep.
I think we've all come to expect that from Riverside. It'll get there, but don't ever be one to jump into using one of their new features and expect it to be perfect from day one.
Which is where Captivate has the edge, because instead of starting from the beginning and working forwards, they've started at essentially the end of the tech stack to get a podcast distributed. They have nailed subscription keeping. They only added AI generated content within their platform last year, I think. Might have been late 2023, I can't remember. And they've added, they're closely connected to Podcasting 2.0. They are AIB certified for a very particular reason. They have their own analytics that they constantly work on. They take the Apple approach to things. They look at what's happening in the space. They talk to the right people. They take it away and squirrel it away for development. And then they release a really refined product that they add, and it doesn't come at a cost to the user. The new ones might. And the recent release of all of those aspects is unusual for them. It's not often that they drop that much all at once. But yeah, it's probably a sign of things to come, that there could be a little bit more cost to what they're doing. But what I see beyond what they announced is well integrated and manageable video podcasting for RSS feeds. I think they're testing their server availability for video storage recorded on a platform for Captivate. They may not have an editor, but I'd say video hosting is something that they're going to be looking at very shortly. Whereas Riverside uses YouTube's APIs and probably Spotify's APIs directly, but doesn't really give you much control over what's happening there. Whereas aligning to RSS could be a real advantage for Captivate. But anyway, I feel like we've gone off track a little bit. And we're kind of at the end of what we're going to be talking about today, aren't we?
Yeah, so I figured we might as well keep on this topic. But
Sure.
Just a couple of things before we wrap up. Sticking to the Captivate Riverside, that whole space. Didn't Zencastr start doing podcast offering hosting like a year ago?
Yeah, I think... I can't remember if they offered hosting before or after they removed their free tier. But I know that's why a lot of people moved off Zencastr as a platform. It may still be distributing, I'm not sure. But as soon as there wasn't a free offering, I think people just stopped talking about it.
But it seems like Zencastr and Squadcast just fell off the map when Riverside and StreamYard came out. The only reason Squadcast continues to live is because Descript came in to save it. I don't see anybody talk about Zencastr ever anymore. And 5-6 years ago, it was like the industry standard for remote recording lossless content. Riverside came out, and probably because they were the first with video, and they've been really aggressive with their marketing. Basically from day one, they've been able to come in and overtake the industry standards. And it was the same with StreamYard. They came in out of nowhere as a streaming software and started really building a reputation as an option for podcasters once they added local recordings. And then they got bought out, and it seems like they're trying to push away podcasters. So StreamYard they're off doing their own thing, which nobody really understands. But yeah, I think Riverside, Descript, and Captivate are kind of the three leaders in the podcasting industry, and having a bigger picture view of where they want to be in the future, as opposed to just trying to play catch up like a lot of the others do.
Yep. And I've heard the stories of RSS and Libsyn and all those other sites being a bit more antiquated with their hosting offering. And listen, I've spent time unpacking and trying to resync Squadcast failed rendered recordings. And did you know that they record to .webm for both video and audio before rendering into MP4? It's really weird. So any kind of advancement in the space is good, but I just really hope that we don't end up in a stage where one company has a monopoly. Let's say Descript and Riverside merge and make RiverScript, and then there's no competition anymore, and the cost becomes a huge barrier to podcasters getting what they need to out of it.
I mean, really, I don't see that happening, at least with Riverside and Descript, because they both seem to be really strong in their leadership and where they want to go. And they take completely different approaches. I'm not sure I could see, you never know, but yeah, that's always a concern, that you get the two big players combining, and then now that costs go up, I guess we start looking at StreamYard again? I don't know.
Maybe. But there is a quiet solution out there integrating OBS and VDO.Ninja. Because I think that has local recording, and that's a free open source solution for networked rooms to connect for recording and for live streaming cameras at up to 1080, I think even 4K. And that's entirely free. So, I don't know.
It's been a while since I've looked into it. I can't remember if with Video Ninja, if it's actual local recordings or if it's kind of the Zoom version of local recordings, where they mean it's recorded locally to the host's computer, not meaning each person is recorded locally. I can't remember which case it was. I'm thinking it was recording locally to the host's computer.
Potentially. But that you can take, and this is something I see come up as a question for Riverside and stuff too, for people who want to do in-person recordings with separate feeds from the same computer in an in-person recording. With Video.Ninja, you can take individual feeds with RTTP links. RTP links? I can't remember. But anyway, URL-based links that you feed as video into OBS individually. And I imagine that could be a method to record individual feeds from OBS potentially with a plugin that would also be free, I presume. And then store that locally on the device, but would require the streaming to be of a very high quality. But the method it uses to stream could be different to the cloud streaming on servers required of Riverside and things like that, because they don't do the cloud streaming, they do the local and then upload the recording. It's hard to say. I think all the money goes to the people who solve all these problems for users and are happy to keep adding more value as time goes on. So video will probably still sit in the background as a solution for people with zero money, but all the time in the world to figure it out for themselves.
Yep. That's the thing. We either have time or money, anybody who has the money is generally open to spending a little bit of that to have a better user experience, to have just a little bit more time and less frustration in their lives. Because usually, in most cases, if something's free, you're missing out on something. It might not be a huge thing, but there's some kind of compromise between the free version of a product or a solution versus a paid solution.
Mm-hmm. Generally, it's support. Like if you have to query the internet and presume that a single line solution will resolve the problem you have, but then you install Voice Meter Banana because you were told that's the thing that solves it and it's free, just install that and you'll be good. But you don't know how it works. It's too complex for you to figure out the thing you need to be able to solve it. And all documentation is user generated as opposed to being available on the website. So you're stuck with a free thing, but you still have to spend 6 hours trying to resolve your problem with something someone suggested on the internet. Whereas you pay for it, you can ask support and they kind of point you in the right direction.
Exactly. As we wrap up, I've got some things here. If you like the video, enjoyed the video, the stream, subscribe, give it a like. If you can't make the live streams, we can always answer your questions. Go to tansiasteracademy.com/ask-a-question. And if you'd like to know more about our, not sure why that's coming back up, but if you'd like to know, reach out to me about AI type work, you can contact me at bbremix.com or tansiasteracademy.com. I need to get an overlay for you and your stuff. So let's just go ahead and do this. Let me see.
Well, why don't
There we go.
Just mention that mbpod.com, mbpod.com has had a lot of work done to it. It's no longer a cheap throwing money at Squarespace just to have a hosted website solution. It's a tuned up website that convinces you that you absolutely need to have a podcast and every reason to sign up with me to get that produced or edited. But it is just very pretty to look at, and my portfolio is there. So if you'd like to see the work that I've edited before, you can check that out there too. Oh, and if the stuff I've explained today has intrigued you about exploring a podcasting philosophy, head to rethinkingpodcasting.com or look up that title on your podcast player.
Thank you for participating in this workshop and being open and forthcoming with your thinking behind your show and your process from beginning to end.
Thank you. It's your expertise, I think, that is most in demand at this stage. For me to spend an hour and a half with you just unpacking some of that for myself, I think is a treat. So thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thank you all for watching. And we should note that since Matt's gone and gotten himself really busy, we're doing these every other week. So if you expect us every week, you can blame Matt for not being here every week.
It's my fault. Sorry, guys.
How dare you get busy with editing and content creation and life? How dare you?
I know, right? People just can't get enough. But the anticipation will grow. Every 2 weeks, people will just be rabid for the live streams on a Tuesday in your morning and my afternoon. We haven't said where we are, but anyway.
Sometime, wherever you are in the world, we'll be here.
That's it.
Have a good one. Bye.
Catch you later.